Yes, so we've got England versus Ghana in the second group game in Group L. Both teams currently looking for their second victory, which will more than likely, I think, just progress them through to the next round, the round of 32. England, obviously, with a 4-2 victory against Croatia in that first game. Bit of a weird first half, but we'll talk about it. And Ghana getting a late winner against Panama. And I think, I mean, I look at that and I just think to myself, yeah, it was listen, you got the victory, you got the 3 points, you get in, you get out of there. It's tournament football at the end of the day. Will Ghana be able to cause an upset against England? Will England just cruise through like most people believe they should? I think it's going to be an interesting game. Stay tuned for some match analysis. Yeah, so like I said, man, I think it's going to be an interesting one just because I look at, obviously, I look at it from a Ghanaian perspective, right? And I think to myself, well, the reality is obviously you're coming in here as the underdogs. You're not the favorites. I mean, we know. Do you get what I'm saying? And but I do think when I've looked at some of the African teams in this tournament so far, they've put up a better fight than I would have assumed. Now, whether that's just because the European teams maybe just not as good as we thought they were, but I looked at, especially when I looked at the game between France and Ivory Coast. Now, I believe Ivory Coast are a better team than Ghana anyway, but when I looked at that game and I've looked at Morocco's performances, again, they're not lighting up anything. They're not doing a madness. It's not, oh my goodness, yeah, they look. No, no, no. It's just more this. None of this seems like a foregone conclusion. You know, if I'm being 100% honest with you, Senegal against France, again, Senegal are a better team than Ghana. So, of course, I do expect them to put up a better fight than a Ghana probably would. But again, I'm looking at a lot of these teams and I'm thinking to myself, I think a lot of these smaller nations, so to speak, in terms of footballing nations anyway, or footballing context, I think when you look at them, yes, in terms of the players that they've got and manager and like I said, set up coach and all these kind of different things, yes, they are inferior to a lot of these other European teams. But there's just something, whether it's just because it's the World Cup, whether it's because it's the conditions, whether it's because, there's a level of arrogance from some teams. I don't really know. It could be a combination of things. I just think when I'm watching some of these games, it's not a foregone conclusion as many probably would have you believe, if I'm being totally honest with you. So for me, I do look at it and I do think to myself, yeah, you know what? I'm not saying I don't believe England will win, and obviously I'll give you guys my predicted scoreline at the end of this video. But I do think that it's just not as a foregone conclusion as maybe people would have you believe. But listen, we'd have to, of course, wait and see. Looking at obviously England's first game. Against Croatia. Listen, look, I didn't do a review after the game. England were first half, they were poor. Well, no, let me take that back. They weren't poor in the first half. I just didn't think that they were that good. And it was a very, in my opinion, even game. When I looked at it anyway, I thought to myself that Croatia actually played pretty decent in that first half. I mean, the goals that they scored were absolutely some of the best goals I've seen in this tournament, because it wasn't about the individual, it was about a team goal, kind of thing. And I think that when I looked at that, I thought to myself, now, obviously, I wouldn't have been able to foresee what was going to happen, of course, in that second half where I felt that England they just took it up a notch. They were absolutely brilliant in that second half. They were intense, they were pressing, they were showing themselves. And I think it's something that I've always kind of mentioned with England is that England need to understand, as much as we're such a like multicultural country, you do need to understand that you do have a core. So in context of football, especially, you have got a core way of doing things. And I almost feel that you need to go back to that. And they did that in the second half. Now, whether Harry Kane, was speaking about, what maybe Tuchel might have said at halftime. The assistant manager came out at the second, just before the second half to do his interview and, speak about it just seemed like there was an annoyance and it looked like that. It felt like, oh, this is the same old England. That's exactly how that first half went. It was same old England doing the same kind of things. It's nothing's really changing. It's the same old garbage, if I'm being totally honest with you. And I felt like if you're going to continue doing that, you're definitely not winning this tournament, kind of thing. But that second half, now, if England are able to start how they started in that second half and they continue that throughout the tournament, yes, it's going to be difficult. But if they're able to keep that up, then England can go really far in this tournament, man, because I think I don't feel like there's going to be anybody else as intense. Now, obviously, they're going to need to be, use players, in this tournament. And I think that's something that Tuchel did pretty well in the game, is that he was able to sub off players like Declan Rice, Saka coming on. And even though I felt that Madueke actually played pretty decent in the game, but he's able to make these kind of changes. Rashford coming on for Gordon, and, all of these kind of little things. He's got the bench, I feel. And I think because it's so balanced in terms of how the team is, it allows for him to be able to kind of do, these kind of things. Do I think that there was cause for concern? Yeah, 100%. I think, England defensively didn't, I mean, it's, to me, it's probably their weakest area anyway, but defensively, they just looked like it was pretty easy to kind of get gotten at. Now, that was in the first half, as opposed to when we look at it from a second half perspective. I didn't feel like it was that easy for Croatia to be able to get through. Now, whether that was just because of the way England kind of approached that second half, whatever. But like I said, England would have to keep that going in order to not get picked off so easily. Now, I'm not saying Ghana will necessarily do that. I do think Ghana will have chances in the game, but I don't think it's going to be as worked as a Croatia, for example. I'm more thinking later on in the tournament, but more specifically, I guess, for, in terms of for this game, I do think it's going to be things like the pacing behind and worrying about the wide areas when it comes to, Ghana versus England. I just think that those are going to be the areas that England are just going to need to just be a little bit careful of, and again, England are the better team. So there's going to be a level of, I don't want to say arrogance, because I don't want to say that they're arrogant players, but there is that, okay, we should just be winning it, so let's just kind of do our thing. If you don't, this is the World Cup, guys. And by the way, I'm not saying England won't do this. I'm just saying it's the World Cup. Teams are coming here fighting for their lives. If you do not put in that same level of effort, I promise you, your quality won't be able to get you out of this, kind of thing. So I think that's where I'm kind of looking at it, from an England, kind of perspective. And yeah, when we look at it from a Ghanaian perspective, again, I feel that, like I said before, Ghana were, in my opinion, I feel like they were poor. I could be just being really, really harsh, kind of thing. I don't really know. People would have to kind of let me know in the comment section. I just felt like they were really poor in the game. Panama, I mean, Panama looked like, I mean, you can see here, look at the possession. Panama 62%. You can't do that against England. You really, really can't do that. Like, England will absolutely destroy you if they have that amount of possession, with 11 more shots than you guys, more shots on target, more touches in opposition, but more big. Come on. Like I said, Ghana were extremely lucky to get that victory. And for me, if you approach the game in the same kind of way, it's not happening. It's not happening at all. I would be shocked if you're able to somehow get another, kind of late winner, in this kind of game. So I think Ghana need to approach this game a lot differently than they did, against Panama. Obviously, they're going to anyway, because they understand it is England. You've got a couple of players in there, players like Semenyo, who know the England team. He knows the England players. He knows more or less how they're going to necessarily think. Obviously, stopping it is another thing, but I think he'll be able to help in that kind of regards. Where they play him, now that's going to be the interesting thing when I think about it, from a Ghanaian kind of perspective. And if I look at that one first, right? Obviously, I've just gone with the kind of lineup that they've kind of, put out here. They put it out as more as a 4-4-1-1 for Ghana. Personally, obviously, they've got Ayew up front. I think Ayew up front, I just think he's going to break a lot of things down. I think that's what he does. I think why he's still here, I have no idea, but he is going to break a lot of things down for Ghana, and it's just not going to stick in the same kind of way. Now, obviously, if Ayew decides, because he's done that in the Premier League a good few times, if he decides that, he's going to start playing some, prime pinning down the centre backs, and if it's Gay or Konzo or Stones, whoever it is, if he's able to, the ball comes fizzed into him, he's able to pin them off, and then you've got the wingers, whether it be Semenyo, whether it be Nuama. Like, if you've got those two with potentially Sulemana coming in from behind, then yeah, potentially it could work. But if he's not able to, to do that, then that's where I feel, I just feel like he's someone, it always breaks down. Like, that ball could potentially get fizzed into him, and then he's going to lose it, but lose touch or not able to hold off kind of. He can hold people off. I'm not saying he can't, but that's like few and far between when it comes to Ayew. Like, and that's my issue, is that ball has to stick. So you can allow for that pass potentially into a Semenyo running off, or Nwama, coming off from that right hand side if he obviously plays in there. I think when I'm looking at the middle of the park, Anderson, Rice, Bellingham versus Urinki and Owusu, then again I'm looking at that and I'm thinking could be a bit of a battle there. Suleiman is probably going to have to kind of drop in, potentially into that midfield again if he's obviously going to start. Just more for the numerical advantage. I understand you don't want to leave Ayew isolated, and I do get that from that perspective, right? And I wouldn't want to leave Ayew isolated, because once you leave him isolated, he's just there. He's just there, unless Semenyo, who obviously is Ghana's best player, unless he is able to facilitate helping him in that regard, which I probably think he would try to work off an Ayew a bit more, then fair enough. But I think he's going to have his hands full. He's playing on that left-hand side, Reece James, Madueke, or a Saka. That's going to be tricky enough for him to be able to kind of, deal with. I do think Ghana can bring a level of intensity to the game. But again, I think it just all depends on how you approach the game for Ghana, if I'm being 100% honest. I think if you're going to approach the game with the kind of, if you approach the game with the mentality like Senegal did in that first half against France, where it's like, we don't care who you are, Mbappe, Elise, Doué, all of these top players and world-class players, right? We don't care. We don't really care. So if they can approach the game with that kind of mentality and don't show England that level of respect, I think that's when the game can become tricky for England. And then that's when they're going to have to really, push the boat out, if I'm being 100% honest. For England, I think, like I said before, not really much. I genuinely believe if you play in the way that you did in that second half against Croatia, I think you win the game. I think it will just be too much in the end for Ghana to be able to kind of hold off, for that amount of time. And I think as you guys saw before, with the amount of shots and chances that Panama were having, who are very inferior, no disrespect to England. Yeah, I don't envisage this game going too well for Ghana. But again, listen, it's the World Cup. Anything can happen. Obviously, I've thrown in Gay. I feel like Gay should play this game. I don't really feel like this is a game for Stones. I would much prefer to see Gay in there, if I'm being 100% honest. Just more for the pace, the recovery pace, potentially with like the likes of Semenyo and the two, and Nwama and Sulemana potentially running off the shoulder of an Ayew. That would be my only kind of thing. But again, I expect England to have the lion's share of the ball. So maybe you do want John Stones on the ball more so than you potentially would, a Mark Gay. So yeah, I think for me, this game it's one of those games where it could be one of those, in a season you get a hiccup, or even in a tournament, to be fair. We saw it with Argentina last time when they lost to Saudi Arabia, in their first game. It could be a hiccup. I don't envisage it being a hiccup. So I'll go with my prediction. Probably go with, I would say, I'll go 3-1 England. I'll go 3-1 England. I think Ghana get a goal, because I still think England's back line's it's a bit weird. But I'm gonna say 3-1 England. I think they cruise to victory, kind of thing. I think it's gonna look maybe a bit at the beginning, but then they will just kind of cruise through, throughout the kind of rest of the game. I think keep the same team, maybe. I mean, I've got Gay there, and I put Rashford in there instead of Gordon. He could keep the same team. I think that might work. But Rashford actually might be the one. You could continue to play Stones, but I feel like Rashford should be the one. I feel like he should start. I don't think Gordon put up a good enough display for him to start the next game. And this is tournament football. You kind of need everyone on song, and also just to use the players as much as you possibly can to keep everybody fresh. He took off Declan Rice in the last game as well. So yeah, I think wait and see. But I'd love to know what everybody kind of thinks in the comment section in regards to the game. How do you guys see it? Do you think Ghana have a chance? Do you think England will cruise to victory? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, people. I'll catch you guys soon.